Hey guys, welcome to Ringsiders Wrestling. Jamie and Callum here, and today our very special guest, Alexander James. Alexander, thank you for joining us.
No, thank you for having me.
Can I just say, this is usually the case anyway. While we're in lockdown and stuff, we can't use our studio that we usually use. And most of our guests have a much more professional setup than we do. And your audio and your setup just pisses all over ours right now.
I appreciate that, but also it's kind of an unfair advantage because my home studio is also my office at all. Like I don't have like a nice setup that I can go to, so everything just has to be here. But on the downside, whenever I'm in Germany and I'm trying to do my streams or whatever else, it's just, whatever the PlayStation will put up with. So like I feel you.
Understandable, yeah. I'm just sat in my living room. There's my fridge right here.
I do like the effect though of like, okay, I got to make this work. We'll go with the blurry background. I appreciate that.
I'm trying to hide the mess in the background, so I just blare it, and then it looks a bit more professional. So
you've got to
work with what you've got, I guess, right?
Yeah.
I don't understand anything technology-wise, so I'm just stood in my bedroom. I can't blare anything. I don't have a clue what to do. So you just get probably. Yeah, I just show up and talk to you.
Yeah.
Pretty much. But obviously, while you're here, we'll start from the beginning because obviously a few people you were trained by, but a couple especially, Rich Swann and Adam Cole. How did that come about, and what was that like learning from those guys?
So a slight correction, but only slight, because I don't know how that got started. I don't know. I guess I did an interview and I mentioned that Adam like helped me a lot and Rich helped me a lot, but then instantly that turned into they were my trainers, which originally they weren't. My original trainers were at the EWA school in Maryland, and my original trainer, the person who first taught me the ropes and everything, his name was the Baltimore Butcher Blood. He was the first person to really like show me what to do, and from there I was really refined and really got, I guess, my finishing training more so from Drew Gulak. But where Rich Swann and Adam Cole come into play is Rich Swann lived like 5 minutes from the school, and one day, which was like one day for him, which is 2 weeks into training for me, he came down, and at the time he had a key to the school, so he opened it up. Don't tell anybody this, but the owner didn't know he had a key to the school, but he had a key to the school. So he opened up, he came in, and I was there, and I was training, and he gets in, and we're all doing like kind of like a little practice scramble match. We're tagging in and out, just working around, and someone said, like, before he got there, someone was like, "Oh, AJ, you can take bumps, go stand on the apron, and we'll tag you in. You just learn how to sell and stuff." I was like, "Okay, cool, super excited, ready to go." Rich gets there, he doesn't know me, he's never met me. He joins in, he gets tagged in, he tags me in, he starts calling spots, and I just start doing them. I'm like, okay, I kind of know what he's talking about, and I just do them, and I'm there. He calls stuff for me to do, I do it. He's safe and sound, everything, and I have been 80% of the stuff he does with me, I haven't been shown how to do before. I'm just kind of doing it and going through his guidance. And he's like, "Oh man, this is good. This is fun. You're real easy and natural to work with. You have good timing. Like, how long have you been working?" I was like, "I've been training for 2 weeks." And he's like, "Oh, all right. If you had told me that before, this might not have gone this way, but like, all right, so this is something I can work with you." And then after that, he would take me on the road with him countless times. I wasn't old enough at the time to go up to train with Drew Gulak at CZW, so my parents had a condition. Like, I was 17, still in high school. So my parents were like, "Well, if someone goes with you, you can go." So Rich, even though he had to work that night, would hop in the car with me, drive 2.5 hours, go train, sometimes only for like an hour or so, because he would have to get to work. And we'd drive back, I'd drop him off at work, I'd go home, and he'd take me all over the road. He would drive way out of his way to make sure I was safe and sound, I'd get home properly, and so my parents wouldn't have to wake up to come get me, stuff like that. So that's where Rich comes into play. Adam, which I actually just got to speak to the other day for the first time in a while, which was cool. He was my very first 2 professional matches. So the first match was like some 4-way ladder match, which we were both involved in. And then the next show, it was me and him one-on-one. And from there on out, he became a big mentor to me as well. He would call me on the phone if I had questions or if I had concerns or if he had learned something and I kind of was like lost in transit or whatever. He would, he would kind of direct me in the right direction and stuff like that. And then we'd end up working again. And he really pulled for me and helped kind of guide me and direct me. especially with my mentality towards wrestling, because I would really nitpick stuff. I'd really focus on stuff. I'd really get down on myself, and he knew what that was like. And he'd call me and tell me, be like, "Hey, there's been times I've stayed up for hours thinking about the matches I've had and what I could do better in this. Sometimes you just got to let it go. Sometimes you just got to move on to the next one." And he really helped me with that mentality, which I think has paid off in the long run. So that's where Rich Swann and Adam Cole kind of come into play.
So instead of being like trainers, they were more like mentors in your early career. Yeah,
100%.
I guess that's two really good people to learn from when you're first starting out. I mean, Adam Cole, everybody knows how good Adam Cole is.
Yeah.
And speaking of Rich Swann, I actually had a memory pop up on Facebook today. It was 6 years ago. I was actually doing the video work at IPW UK, and I got the chance to meet Rich Swann. And he was such a nice guy, one of the nicest wrestlers I've actually met in person.
He's such a pleasant, nice, fun-loving person. He just wants to help. He wants to see people succeed. He's not someone who's wrapped up in their own ego, because he knows he's talented. He doesn't have to talk about it. He doesn't have to brag about it. He wants to see other people succeed. He knows he's going to succeed. He's a great guy.
What a great guy to learn from. Adam Cole and Rich Swann, two very different styles, but I'm guessing you was able to pick up different things from each of them, which have made you into the wrestler you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest thing I got from Rich specifically is timing, because he's very athletic and he's very aerial and stuff like that. And being a bigger individual, not quite at the time, because I was 170 pounds soaking wet, which I don't really know what that transfers to kilograms or stones or anything like that. So I apologize for being very American.
Sorry, I only do pounds anyway from wrestling. I only
okay, cool. Cool. So I was a beanpole, but now that I've grown up, I'm 6'2", I'm about 230 pounds. I'm not going to work like necessarily Rich is, or not necessarily as much as Adam is either, but with Rich, he really taught me timing and how to be a good base for things that he would do so that I can apply later on. And with Adam, it was the mindset, and it was how to present yourself, and how to have the mentality and go about wrestling in a certain way, of which, garner success and knowledge, so especially with Adam, he skyrocketed. There's no question about it. But it wasn't necessarily because he has that it factor, which he does have. It's because of his work ethic, his mentality, and what he did to learn and continue to improve and stuff like that. And that's why he's in the position he's in, regardless of natural ability or anything like that, or being destined to do this, whatever you want to call it. I mean, I think that's part of it. He was meant to be a pro wrestler, but it was his work ethic which instilled that, right? Because I think there's a saying, it's like in bodybuilding or something, that what is it? Natural ability will always beat, or natural talent will always beat hard work. But if natural talent has hard work, there's no topping it.
Yeah, it was always going to happen for Adam.
Yeah. And so with that mentality and him instilling that with me, it made me very hungry to learn from different people. Even years into my career, when I first went over to WXW, I didn't go over just to wrestle. I went and was like, oh, I'll get to learn under Walter, so that'll be a valuable experience. So let's get as much out of that as I possibly can. And then turning into a trainer, I don't just see that as some would see becoming a trainer as a position of being in charge or above people, being I have to do what I do. I'm a senior. That's stupid for me. And this was taught to me by not only Adam, but Joey Mercury as well. When you become a trainer, it's a chance to learn something twice. So it's another chance to learn and reinstill knowledge that even if you're teaching it by repeating it, you're just ingraining it more in yourself. And that's all stuff that I kind of got from Adam, whether he knows that or not.
Sure. I imagine being a trainer, like you said, you're learning it for the second time because you're having to teach it to people, but you're also going over it again in a different way, where it kind of cements to yourself that you know this thing because you're teaching somebody else it. So I'm guessing you see it with a different pair of eyes. So being a trainer must be almost training for the second time for yourself in a way. You're picking things up differently or teaching them a bit differently.
Yeah, because there's so many different ways to do things, and I don't want to come in being a trainer. I don't want to come into anything with it's just hey, this is the way I do it. No, especially with Gulak having been someone I learned under and being a trainer, he was not only an expert grappler. There was times he was a luchador. There was times he knew how to do this or how to do that, and so when he would run training, he's okay, this is the way I prefer to do it, but here's the other ways I know how to do it. And if there was a way that was just wrong because it was unsafe or whatever else, he'd be okay, this is why this isn't okay, but you could do this in its place. Not the way I do it, but everybody has, different ways of going about it. So that's how I try to go about training. And in doing so, there's certain skills or certain ways of doing things that I've maybe forgotten or didn't know, but through teaching I've been taught or have learned or just re-equipped myself with and reinstilled. So maybe it's not something that I use on a regular basis, but by teaching it and showing the different aspects of things, even if they're not my preference, now those other styles and other ways of doing things are more ingrained in me as a performer, which again is another learning experience, but also makes me more valuable because I can work with anybody. And we don't have to have my match. We can have whatever match that spot on the card calls for, whatever best suits my opponent to get them in the best position possible to succeed. Because there's so many people out there who are, their mindset is like, I'm going to look really good this match. And my mindset going into a match is like, we're going to look really good. Or if I'm, the baddie, not to, break that wall too much. If I'm the baddie and I'm facing the goodie, then my goal is I'm going to make you look amazing. Like, because that's I'm not out there to get the yays, because then I'm not doing my job.
That should be the goal of most people, though. Like,
you'd think.
There's the saying where you only look as strong as your opponent, because if you're doing a promo and you're saying, "Oh, I'm going to beat my opponent. He means nothing. He's not very good," then you just beat a nobody. That's not impressing anybody. But if you hype up your opponent and say, "Hey, he's great. He's really good. He wouldn't be here if he wasn't, but I'm still going to beat him," that makes you look even better.
Absolutely. And it doesn't even have to be someone. It doesn't even have to be someone that's legitimate, right? Like if you're, on night 2, I wrestled someone named like Alpha Kevin, and I didn't necessarily have to do a promo about Alpha Kevin, but the whole shtick was I was saying someone at my caliber had to come out to face me, but then he came out, which was notorious for being like kind of a goofy character and the underdog in Germany in a sense, and to go about something like that, I wouldn't just be like, oh, like, you're here to lose to people or this or that, whatever. Like there's still things you can do to make that person look somewhat legitimate. You can talk about how much heart they have, how much fight they have. Like there's no point to ever just completely downplay somebody, because at the end of the day, we're all supposed to be stars in some way, shape, or form out there. So if you just completely take that away, you're not only hurting them, but yourself as well, and possibly the product, which is just dumb.
I find Chris Jericho is very good at doing that. He's really good at putting over like the people you think he'd definitely be able to beat. He's good at still putting them over, but also still ripping on them at the same time. And making them look strong.
Like I feel like the best example of that is when he had to face like Fandango at WrestleMania, which now years later it's very out there that he wasn't for it. He wasn't happy with that. It wasn't something he was a fan of. But you go back and watch that kind of feud at the time. Fandango, which was like a bit character at the time, seemed to me, from the way they went about things, to be in the same league as Jericho. And whether Jericho necessarily was happy with doing that or not, he accomplished the task tenfold. But yet to me, Jericho was still the former undisputed champ. And now I didn't see, like, because it's so easy that when you're in that top position, you could then come down and just be, if you're not the performer that you're really set out to be, you could easily just be dragged down by being paired with someone else that you're supposed to be bringing up. But at no point in shape and time did that happen. It just seems like, oh, Fandango is really like coming into his own, if anything.
Yeah. That's the best example. I love that Fandango feud, but I remember wasn't too happy with it.
Sorry, Cam. I recently read Bob Holly's book, and Bob Holly tells a story in his book as well. When he was just getting started, I think it was maybe his second match, and he was wrestling. He got told he was wrestling Ric Flair, and basically this young kid comes in and wrestling Ric Flair. And in the book, he actually says, Ric Flair sold for me like I was on his level, like I was competing for his world title. And those kind of guys. And he said, Ric Flair said to him after the match, he thanked him. He said, look, I make you look good. It makes me look good for beating you. And it's that mentality, isn't it? I guess that's how it should be done in this business.
Yeah, and I think Ric Flair is a good example of that, because as notorious as he may be, and maybe not the best example of how to live a personal life or whatever else, I've heard so many firsthand stories of people being like, yeah, Rick like didn't really talk to me beforehand or whatever else, or this was going to happen, but then he went out there and made me look like a star, or he put such and such over. And like Rick always makes a joke, he lost way more times than he ever won.
Yeah.
And he is notorious. Like I've heard stories of him going out there with I guess famous enhancement, who's really just an amazing all around wrestler, George South, and then being like, oh, I'm just gonna make George South look like $1 million for 15 minutes, and then I'm gonna win because I'm the world champ, whatever. So he makes George South look good. He goes out there with God knows who else from the territories, and that was also his job, was to go be a traveling world champion, go from place to place to place, and even if their top babyface is not that great, he's like, I can make them look great, and then they'll make more money, and then I'll make more money.
Wrestling,
and
you have the option to still make them look good.
Yeah, like it's you just like I guess it's the notorious, not notorious. I should stop using that word. The famous example is Paul Heyman of just amplifying people's strengths and everything. And you just gotta like hide the weaknesses, which again, it's pro wrestling. It's all about the entertainment and the moments and the values and stuff. Not everybody has to do the best wrist lock in the world. Not everybody has to be the best wrestler in the world. And that's coming from me, who's I guess supposedly notorious for being like a grappler and a catcher in a sense, and that's that style that I prefer. But you don't have to do that. Like my best friend and tag partner is Jurn Simmons, who was getting booked all over because he did this amazing entrance. And like, I guess most guys like me would be like, oh, that's not pro wrestling. But no, that's absolutely pro wrestling.
Yeah.
That's what it is. The spectacle, the entertainment. And then he goes out there and maybe he's not exchanging wrist locks to grappling to this and doing this hard hitting back and forth, but he creates great moments that people get into. And that's what pro wrestling is. So whatever your platform is to do that, that's what it is.
That's it. That's one thing that's always annoyed me is when you have somebody say, oh, they're not a real wrestler. And it's like, well, what is a real wrestler? Like, pro wrestling, there's the Undertaker, who's an undead wizard. There's nothing. Everything's just spectacle and stuff. Like, what is a real wrestler? And like, oh, it has to be wrist locks and technical. And I'm like, no, that's just a style of wrestling. It's not the be all and end all. It can be anything.
Like I have no issues with any style of wrestling as long as like there's things out there I see like GIFs and stuff like that I just don't like, but it could be one of two reasons. It could be one, that's just not my flavor of ice cream, which is fine. I'm a vanilla person. Some people like strawberry. Some people like whatever other god awful flavors there are. That just isn't my thing. But as long as everything kind of goes the underlying rules of professional wrestling, in my opinion, of it being a simulated combat, of you not abusing the believability of it, as long as people can maintain invested and actually hope in the winner and loser and stuff like that, and believe in what's happening, as long as you're not purposefully reminding them that maybe this isn't on the up and up, then I think all styles of professional wrestling are acceptable and beautiful in their own way. Even like I'm notorious for telling this to my students. I'm not a big fan of Lucha Libre at all. It's not my thing. I don't like it. But for them and that audience and that atmosphere, it's perfect and it's superheroes and it's great and they believe in it. So it's great. It's awesome.
Yeah, it doesn't mean it's bad. It's just like you said.
Oh no, wait, I lost you. My headphones went off. Okay, there we go. Sorry.
Yeah,
I panicked.
It doesn't mean it's bad. Like you said with the ice cream analogy, you don't like every flavor of ice cream, but you'll find ones you do like, and somebody else might like that flavor. So I've always liked that analogy because it's so true. There's so many different styles of wrestling and types of the ways to convey the wrestling, not just in the ring, but outside with promos and like with the Matt Hardy Ultimate Deletion kind of thing. That was a different take on it. And with cinematic wrestling recently, I love it. I love cinematic wrestling. I think it's amazing. But I know some people don't like it, and that's fine.
Yeah. Like I was really into the Taker match that was cinematic with AJ Styles. I was really into the Bray Wyatt's thing. There's been others that have tried to attempt it, or even like there's aspects of it, like the Undertaker one I really liked, because at the end of the day, even though there's cameras there and there's explosions or whatever else, it felt legitimate. Like it just felt like it was a fight that was filmed in a movie sense. Like people were just in the right positions. It's realistic. And to me, it was just a Georgia boy fighting an actual Texas biker. Like the shit talking, the back and forth, nothing got too terribly like. There's a couple, of course, some Undertaker spots, but Undertaker's one of those people that you just let it happen. So that to me didn't abuse what pro wrestling was. I thought it was very enjoable.
He killed off Gallows and Anderson. He set them on fire and they exploded, and they were never seen again.
Well, I mean, it's not unbelievable, right? People die from explosions. It happens, right? I don't. Maybe he should have been arrested afterwards instead of riding off into the moonlight on a bike. But yeah.
But obviously, well, speaking of stars of wrestling, if we move on a little bit, CZW. I mean, how did that come about? I mean, you mentioned training with Drew Gulak, and what led you there? Is that a style that you kind of enjoyed?
My relationship, even to this day, with CZW has been and always will be kind of tumultuous. I think that's the word. I think I pronounced it right. If not, I'm sorry, my English isn't that good, even though it's the only thing I speak. I I first started there because the owner of CCW at the time, DJ Hyde, would come down to the EWA school at times and help out. He like as much as negative as he's done, and as much his name has been dragged through the mud, and even rightfully so. I'm not defending what things he said or whatever by any means. I have seen him legitimately go out of his way to help individuals, and he would pull people and invite them to come train at CCW for free. And so that's what got me in front of Drew, him and Swann. And what got me in the door at CCW, actually doing shows, was after working a match with Joe Gacy for Greg Excellence promotion in Pennsylvania at the time. Drew was like, okay, he's been training with us, and I just saw this match. He did really good. I want to defend the Wired title against him this month. And DJ was against it. He's like, no, all the way up until like 10 minutes before the show. He was like, you're not defending our new title against him. And Drew was like, no, I am. And Drew at the time, and even maybe still at various places, I don't know, he's a very commanding presence. He's very professional. He's an adult in every shape and form, and wrestling unfortunately is missing a lot of adults. But he was like, no, I am, and this is why. And it happened. And from there on out, I just kind of fell into the gimmick of being Drew's second and lackey, and being with the campaign, which actually, I don't know where it is now. I was wearing my Campaign for a Better Combat Zone shirt like to the gym today. I should have just left it on, but fell into that. But even throughout then, the entire time, I'd be off a show, I'd be on a show, I'd have a match, I wouldn't have a match. They wouldn't want to put me out in a match, they would want to put me out in a match. And sometimes some of the matches I did got was because, in fact, one time in particular, which is the first time I met Chris Brooks, he came over to the United States and wrestled for CZW, and Drew was running late to the show. They said I might have to replace him, so I might wrestle Chris. I was very excited. Chris was really cool. It still is. And Drew showed up, and he got there in time. And he saw I was dressed and ready to go. And Drew didn't need the match. Drew didn't at the time need more notoriety. He was doing well. He always has been. He's setting the course, and it didn't necessarily increase or improve his storyline to have this match at CZW. And he recognized that fact. And he looked at me. He's like, "Do you want to have this match?" I was like, "No, it's yours." He's like, he looked at me stern, and he said, "No, AJ, I'm sorry." He said, "No, Alexander James. Do you want to have this match?" I was like, "Yeah, of course I do." He's like, "Okay." He walked over, grabbed DJ. He's like, "Okay, I'm still not going out. We're going to do this, and this, and AJ's going to have the match." And just gave me the match on this main card CZW show against, like, a British import, which is really cool. Yeah. But even then I get split up from the campaign. I go to do my own thing. All of a sudden, me and Swann have a match at Cage of Death. It goes too long. They want to take me off the shows again. Then Drew fights to get me back on and all that kind of stuff. And at some point, no matter what good I did, even there was a time where DJ hated my wrestling, but he's like, okay, he can really do an in-ring promo. He can really talk. So we'll just keep sending him out there to do that. And then that's ran its course. And eventually I was just blatantly told, like, you're never going to be our guy. You're never going to be the guy. You don't have that it factor. I'm sure you'll do well. I'm sure you'll do well other places. It won't be here. And I was like, oh, well, okay. Thanks for that. And then to not to defend or anything like that, but after that, then immediately, or a couple months later, he tried helping me hook him up with an overseas tour and working with WXW and stuff like that. So even though, to his credit in the sense, even though he didn't want me and didn't believe in me, he found an opportunity for me to at least do the best as I possibly could. So it's kind of like, it's, if anybody coming into listening to this didn't understand DJ Hyde before, you're not going to afterwards, because there's nothing to understand. It's he's an eclectic human being, as everything has come out as seen. But I'm very appreciative of that, and it did a lot for me, and I definitely capitalized on my opportunity. And then months later, I come back and I challenged John Silver or years later, I come back and I challenged John Silver for the world title in a spot that I was told I would never, ever 100% be in. Even if I would, like, the only time I would ever be in that spot is if Drew came back from WWE and I was in his corner. And that wasn't going to happen, because I don't think Drew's leaving there anytime soon. So I found myself in that position, and it was kind of like it was a weird relationship from the very beginning. It just got weirder, but at the same time, it motivated me. It forced me to be better. It forced me to find all my flaws, capitalize on them, and correct them, and improve, and really make myself undeniable. And if I've accomplished that at this point, I don't know. I think I have, but I'm still constantly improving and I'm still finding things. So it's, I guess, the journey is to continue to be undeniable and continue to find those flaws. And in doing so, I kind of stuck it to them in a sense, which I guess is always a big motivator, right? Like that dumb expression, haters are your motivators.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it safe to say as well, and obviously you mentioned Swann and Cole as mentors, but obviously Drew Gulak's been a very important person to you in your career as well, then?
Yes, absolutely. Whenever there's been certain individuals that have worked certain places, I'm not going to name names, but they asked me like my history of training. And I've gone through it and then put Drew at the end. And I was like, he's really who I learned the most from, though, and really finished up my training and really gave me the mentality. And really, he's the one I would say finished my training. And then they would stop and be like, okay, from now on, because if you had told me the other bits, I wouldn't have really worked the way I did with you. So from now on, just say Drew. So Drew always kind of laughs at it or gives it a look, and he'll always kind of be like, I'm not your trainer. Like he always kind of looked at me like, I don't actually know how he looked. I know we're friends, but I don't know necessarily how he looked at me during that time. Yeah. But I joke with him. I'm like, oh, you finished my training. You're like my finishing trainer. And he'll just be like, yeah, okay.
I actually think it would be really cool. This is just from a fan point of view, to see you back with Drew in WWE, if that was ever going to happen. You with Drew, but as a stable with Timothy Thatcher, as like that catch can stable.
Drew
and Timothy Thatcher, to me, would be an awesome stable.
I would be all about it. And Thatcher is another individual that I have, I think reluctantly on his end, a close relationship with, who's also become a mentor to me at times. And someone I've had some of my best matches with. Like a couple months ago, not to put myself over too much here on an interview about me, but a couple months ago when WWE Network announced their relationship with WXW in Progress and ICW and things being featured on the network, the very first show was Ambition 11, where I faced Thatcher again in the first round of the Ambition tournament, which is a shoot fighting UWFI Pancrase style, which is something I find myself very proficient in. And I was so happy that my first introductory to the WWE universe, in a sense, was wrestling Tim, who's been a big mentor to me. Again, whether he likes it or not, and really getting to show that set of skills in that universe. So like for all of the three of us to then at some point come together, I think is kind of a beautiful irony of a story.
I'd be all for that. Bring Drew back to NXT and bring you up, bring you to NXT. And I think that stable there would just thrive, because I'm loving Timothy Thatcher's work. I've been a fan of Gulak throughout of all WE. I mean, I even loved his PowerPoint presentation thing. I thought he killed it with the PowerPoint stuff. Loved it. The guy is just insanely charismatic, and I don't think he realizes how good he actually is at like the promo and character work. Like
I said to Callum, he actually reminds me of Kurt Angle when he first came around.
Yeah,
he can do everything. He can be serious, but he can be comedic, and he reminds me a lot of Kurt Angle in that respect.
Absolutely. And that's one of the biggest things I learned from Drew, especially during the whole combat or campaign for a better combat zone thing, is like Drew was, trying to become world champion, but on the way up and being wired champion, he was doing these silly stuff and this funny stuff and all this kind of stuff. And I didn't quite get it. And then he would have me do it, and being the lackey to someone doing funny stuff, I had to do stuff that was way more embarrassing or whatever else and be put out there and do these promos. And it really taught me to get out of that comfort zone and understand that wrestling isn't always the serious nitty gritty Mr. Badass. Sometimes you grow into that or whatever else. You have to be comfortable going out of that comfort zone, and you have to be, in a sense, a Swiss Army knife of a performer. You got to be able to do everything. That's what's going to make you the most valuable. Because there's going to be times like Kurt Angle, for example. There was times he wasn't in the main event spot. It wasn't his time to do that. So he can go into another position, do some funny, entertaining stuff, keep himself relevant, keep himself a serious competitor, have some really memorable moments. And then when it's his time to be back to that vicious grappler world champion, he can go right back into that spot without missing a beat. And I think that's an invaluable lesson that I learned from Drew, that I think one that if I could pass on to people, I think would be the most valuable for the sheer fact that everybody that gets into wrestling obviously wants to take themselves super seriously. They want to do this, they want to do that, they want to be the next. For a while, it was the next. They wanted to be the next Bryan Danielson. Then they wanted to be the next Davey Richards. Then they wanted to be the next Eddie Edwards. Or then they wanted to be the next whatever the wrestler was, right?
Yeah.
And that's not always everybody's path, and that's okay. And sometimes you have to do other things because at the end of the day, it's about providing entertainment. And also that might not be what suits you best, and that's okay. For the longest time, I wanted to be the very pretty, like, escapology style wrestler where it's flowing in and out of technical movements, so pretty and all that kind of stuff. And I can do that stuff a little bit, but after working with Thatcher and Walter and stuff like that, and having a shoot background in jiu-jitsu and amateur wrestling for a long time, and learning different catch things from Tim, legitimate like catch style shoot grappling, they kind of pointed out, like, yeah, that's great. And Aldis, I think, pointed it out to me as well. He's like, yeah, that's great and all, but you can do the very nitty gritty strong stuff, and that's what suits you and looks better. So maybe don't try to force yourself into something you like rather than fit comfortably into something that comes naturally for you. And that all, again, comes back to Drew and him finding his way, him knowing what suits him and just making the best of it. And then again, sometimes you have to branch out and do other things out of your comfort zone. But the farther you can push your comfort zone, the wider your comfort zone then ends up being, and then the more versatile of a performer you are.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like Kurt Angle, like, is an all-rounder. And going back to you with learning from Drew, it sounds like you started out wanting to do one thing, but you've realized you can do quite a few things. And that if you can become that all-around performer, you become more valuable to any company you work with. And I think that's like something that a lot of wrestlers should aim to do. Instead of just trying to be really good at one thing, try and be good at quite a few things. I think that just applies to life in general.
Yeah, your basis, your base level, you should kind of have a general knowledge of everything. You're not going to be an expert in everything, but you should have a general knowledge of everything. And then whatever suits you best and whatever maybe you enjoy or whatever suits you comes more naturally, then that's when you can kind of build that expertise. Because there's very few people like maybe a Cesaro or a Bryan Danielson that are going to be experts at everything. But you can have, like, Walter, for instance. Maybe he doesn't want people to know this. I've seen him do fancy, funny little lucha spots. Like, he has the ability, but that's not what suits him, and that's not what works for him, and that's not what would, that's not what would make him money, right? So, but he has a general knowledge of everything, but he's really good at being that in-ring general, making the basics matter the most, and working that type of style, and so that's what makes the best performers, I think.
On that note, then, before we start wrapping up, we've spoken about, like, where you've come from and how you trained and everything like that. But going forwards, I mean, like you said, you've been introduced to the WWE universe now, through WXW on the network. And what's next for Alexander James? I know we're in a lockdown at the moment. We're in a pandemic. It's hard to tell what's coming soon. But what is next for you?
I don't really know. When 16 Carat happened, it was one of the most rewarding and I think best professional weekends of my life. It was my second 16 Carat. I think I knocked this one out of the park. The first one, everyone was kind of like, oh, why is he in it? Right? Like, I had the owner of the company getting questions on his, like, kind of like video things for the WXW network of, like, why is Alexander James in the 16 Carat? And, at the time, I was very offended by that. Like, I had fans asking for me to be in it, so I thought it was real cool and over and stuff. But, like, looking at the card and everything and where I was at and who I was soon to becoming, but not quite there yet, I kind of got it. But then this past 16 Carat, when I was announced for it, it was just like, well, yeah, of course he's in it. He's one of the main event guys now. Like, he's supposed to be in it. And then when I lost first round, everyone was like, him and Mario Solani are out? Like, those are our two to pick it, right? Those are our two homegrown guys that we thought would take it. So to have that and be in that position, be held in that regard, and then to do what I did the rest of the weekend, like, there's a lot of things coming out of it where I was just like, okay, this was a good step for this year. I got a lot of momentum coming out of this. I know some of the things I'm going to do with WXW down the road. I'm very excited for it. I've made some connections this weekend that could really pay off. A couple weeks prior, I had some inquiries from certain places, and then contacts in some other places that were all kind of like, okay, this is what I want. This could be cool. And then the immediate Monday after 16 Carat, the world started ending and everything was locked down. And I was like, okay. So with that mentality, I was like, all right, that's fine. If this is what I did this year, I can be happy with that. It's not like I'm behind and everybody else is going for it. Everybody's in this spot. So it's time to just put my nose down, kind of ignore the outside world a bit, stay safe, and train, and just make myself the best performer overall as possible. And anything else that comes up, that's just a bonus. And then Bloodsport came up, which
I was going to ask you about Bloodsport. Yeah, tell us about Bloodsport. Yeah, that was going to be my next question, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, that was something where my fiance Killer Kelly was contacted for it, and she threw my name out there like, hey, this is what he does. He's real good at this. Tim Thatcher will vouch for him. I'm not sure how many people Thatcher would vouch for, but I think he'd vouch for him. And I was contacted by GCW for it, and I was just like, oh, okay, maybe they're just contacting me because, you know, they need some more people, and you know, I wasn't on the original Mania card, and they want someone to drive with Kelly or something. I don't know. Then I got there and I found out that no, Josh Barnett looked at my stuff and he wanted me.
Awesome.
And so, to hear that and come from his mouth, I was like, oh wow. And then he even said to me and Calvin Tampman before going out, he was like, hey, you guys have the ability to steal the show. I know you do. You guys go out there and throw and kill it. So go out there and do that. And then we did it. It was, not to pat myself too much on the back, although I'm going to. A lot of people really enjoyed it. A lot of people raved for it, which is fine. That's great. I don't pay too much attention to the online reviews and stuff like that. It's nice to be recognized for my work, but I'm not going to let that affect the way I perform my art, right? Like Van Gogh wasn't going around to all the, not that I'm Van Gogh by any means, but Van Gogh wasn't going around to where his art was being displayed and listening to people's critiques off the street, right? Which, and again, no offense, everybody has their opinion. Everybody's allowed to like or love whatever they like. Or hate, for that matter. You probably shouldn't hate, but you can dislike. But when I came back and Josh Barnett had apparently like gave us a little round of applause at the finish, and then like both gave us a pat on the back and was very pumped. I was like, okay, hell yeah, this is some momentum. I did good. Let's keep this going. So I'm sorry I keep going on these tangents, but the short answer, I guess, is I didn't expect anything to happen. I didn't expect to have a plan going into this year, just to train, get myself in the best shape as humanly possible, which I'm in the best shape I've ever been in. Mm-hmm. So far, and I'm not done yet. So far that's happened. But as far as what's next, I have inquiries. I have people that have maybe opened up a little bit since Bloodsport has happened, and Carrot. I have some people have reached out since previously not, when things, you know, went to hell and all that. Mm-hmm. So the answer is I don't know, but it's looking good. There's plenty of possibilities, and if not, that's fine, because I'm going to keep working. I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. Eventually I'll be able to get back over to WXW, and slowly but surely I'm just going to continue to work my ass off during this pandemic to make myself undeniable to when there are regular shows and we get back to whatever the normal will be. Yeah. And so sorry to give a long-winded answer that has no actual conclusion, but the answer is there's some stuff cooking. I can't say what. I don't even know if it will work out, but if it doesn't, fuck it. I'm going to make something happen.
Awesome. Well, no, that's a good answer. I mean, I know it's quite a big question, to be fair, what's next, but that's kind of answer I expected. It's hard for anyone to know what's going on right now. Like, we're in the middle of a pandemic. Nobody really knows what's going on, but it's good to know that you've got these options. You've got things potentially lined up. I'd love to see more of you in Bloodsport, personally. I think you fit so well in Bloodsport.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
When I tuned into it, that was actually the match that was on when I first, because we had it on Fight TV. Mm-hmm. When I put it on, I was like, oh, cool. And just started watching it from there. And it was awesome. You fit right into that like whole environment. So more of that would be great. Hopefully we'll see you there again down the line.
I think it's a possibility. I don't know for sure, but from everything that's gone around or conversations had afterwards, it seems that your opinion of me being a good fit was not solely to you. There's people in the back that thought so as well. A lot of people. So I can't say for sure I'll be back in Bloodsport, but I think the possibility is very likely, and I would be happy to do so because I love that style of wrestling. Again, I know it's a niche thing. I know it's not everybody's cup of tea, but I love that it is now available here in the States, and I would love to do it as much as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Well, obviously, one final question before you go. Just a quick question. Mm-hmm. What's it like taking a chop from Walter?
So, not to ruin the big man's aura, especially after the match that just happened. They suck, but Elias are worse.
Really?
Yeah. So not like Walters will still make you piss yourself and poop yourself and wonder about life all at the same time, but he's got this big old pan of a hand that just covers your whole chest. So it's blunt force trauma over a greater area. Rather, Eli's got these little hands that just cut you open and just go quick. And those, damn. Especially because he throws more of them too. And they're just quicker. And like I found individuals with smaller hands and quicker chops hurt worse than individuals with bigger hands.
Right. Well, I'm using that as a soundbite for this episode.
Oh no.
That's what we'll get people
I've got to hold my hand up. I've actually not watched that match yet from NXT UK.
So good.
It is really so
good.
Yeah. I was hesitant to watch it at first because at WXW, they've had so many matches just like that. And I think Matthew from Botchamania put it best. It's like when you tell someone to watch a movie over and over and they don't, and then 3 years later they watch the movie and then they come back to you, they're like, hey, have you seen this movie? It's great. And it's like, yeah, I have.
Yeah.
I promise I will watch it as soon as we end this call.
Do it. It's good.
But obviously, Alexander, before I wrap it up, this is where we let you plug your social medias, your merchandise.
So you can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Payne Prince James. Easy, it's the same handle on both, Payne Prince James. I'm not available on Facebook. I deleted that a while ago. Just too much nonsense on there, and it's not really good for marketing or anything anyway. It's just kind of, apparently that's the old people social media, so I don't have it. If you do happen to find an individual that looks like me on there, either they're not me or you should turn around and walk away because it's none of your business. You can, my merchandise is all my merchandise now is on teespring.com/storage/Alexander James. I switched to a Teespring because I found that like I mostly work in Europe, and they produce there in Europe, so it's much easier for that way. Pro Wrestling Tees doesn't have a store currently in Europe, although apparently they're working on it. So individuals would want to buy my shirts, but they'd always have to wait for a sale and stuff like that. That sounds like I'm moving crap tons of merchandise, but that's not the case. It's just said individuals happen to be in Europe. Although if you want to buy a shit ton, you can go right ahead. So you can find me available on that. And also I do stream on Twitch. This isn't a shot at anybody in the WWE. I've been streaming actually on Twitch for years. That is actually my other kind of job outside of wrestling, where it's more the actual side of me. It's more AJ Winkler, less Alexander James. I said Winkler, very German there for a second. And that is just a fun place for individuals to come, hang out. It's a safe place. I've had my struggles with mental health in the past, and even now from time to time with anxiety and things like that. Mm-hmm. And I always just went to Team Triple Jump or What Culture Gaming and stuff like that. Honestly, PlayStation Access even. Honestly, always British YouTube channels. I don't know why, but I find myself going to those, and that would relax me and calm me down. And I've had people who that's one of my goals with my streams is to give people a safe place to come, escape the day for a bit, and just relax and chill, and let's just have a good time, and let's just escape the world for a bit. Obviously, it's
subscribe to that. Definitely.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and it's obviously like a small business for me as well. It's something I invest time and money into, and like look for a return in a sense. But at the same time, I've had so many people contact me and been like, "Yeah, your streams helped me calm down. Have helped me a lot the past couple of days." And even if they just show up for a couple of weeks and then they're gone, but as long as they're feeling better, I mean, that's a rewarding thing for me. So that's available at twitch.tv/thecrowntwitch, and that Twitter is thecrown_gaming. There's a YouTube associated with it as well. I am not a fancy big old YouTube boy, so I don't have a fancy URL link, but if you'd like to subscribe to that as well, you go to the twitch.tv/thecrowntwitch and hit the YouTube button below. It takes you right to it. I do know how to do that with technology. So
I'll put the links in the description anyway.
I appreciate that.
No problem.
But it's been an absolute pleasure, man. I could talk for hours and hours. It's just been so much fun. Hopefully you'll come back on again.
Absolutely. Whenever you guys would like me, I'm happy to do so. I found myself doing a lot of these lately, and I find myself, I feel bad because I've kind of go on tangents, and trust me, like most people seem to like it. I apologize for it because I feel foolish for doing it, but it's nothing compared on the tangents I go to in training. So at the same time, like I think you guys got the easiest bit of it because my students and my fiance as well will also be like, he doesn't stop talking.
Hey, to be fair, there's nothing wrong with talking on a podcast. That's the whole point.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Hell yeah. Honestly, man, we can't thank you enough. We will do this again, but for now, He is Alexander James. We are Ringsiders.